Hey, good afternoon, everybody. Um, just wanted to say a few things today. I don't typically make videos like this, but woke up about a half an hour ago and just decided to talk a little bit before I decided to go to the gym and go to work this evening. Been a couple of days since I've really engaged in any kind of debates with anybody. Haven't really posted anything that has elicited any kind of debate. However, I think it's really important that we talk about a couple of idioms at this point. One of which is the boy who cried wolf, and also the hamster wheel. Both stories which I believe many of you are familiar with. So, for all of you who don't know, and I would find it hard to believe that anybody would not know about the boy who cried wolf, you know the story of the boy who has the sheep, and several times he screams out to the villagers that there are wolves trying to take his sheep, trying to eat his sheep. Well, he's telling a lie the first few times, and then the one time that the wolf is actually trying to come in and try to attack his sheep, the villagers don't believe him. Well, what does that speak of? It speaks of his credibility, his reliability. And then the other one, of course, is the hamster wheel. A lot of times people will use the analogy of the hamster on the wheel who's inside of this cage, and he's constantly running, but he's never really going anywhere. We are in a situation much like that in our country today and in many of our communities. And what I mean by that is that, the issues of racism and police brutality and accusing someone of being something that they're not seems to be a recurring theme in this nation. And what's happening is you have people on one side who are screaming out, saying they have been victimized of or have been victims of racism, of racial injustice. And, then you have people on the other side that say, hey, look, it's not real. It's all in your head. Or you have people who like to say, okay, well, it doesn't happen that often, so you need to just get over it. It's not that serious. Excuse me. You need to just take a step back. Well, if we're going to talk about these things, then we also have to have a conversation about what's real and what's not. Okay? With that being said, if someone tells you that they have been a victim of racism and your response is, hey, look, racism no longer exists. Well, as a nation, we're essentially on the hamster wheel. We're running, and we're never really getting anywhere because all that other person on one side is saying, look, your feelings don't matter, you're crazy, you're just making that up. And on the other side, that person feels further victimized because you have invalidated their feelings. We have got to stop doing that. I myself have experienced racism. All of you know that I've been in law enforcement for quite some time now. I have been called racial slurs in uniform while I was making arrest, answering calls. I've been called the N-word. I've been called, for those of you who've never heard this word, the word is actually jigaboo. I would not suggest anybody go around repeating that word. But yeah, I have been called those names, both in and out of uniform. And so it's really disingenuous to tell people that racism no longer exists because, like I've said before in a few of my posts, that racism is essentially evil, just like prejudice and bigotry and sex trafficking and sin and all those things. It exists under the larger umbrella of evil. And so if you know that there's evil still in the world, but then you try to deny it because somebody screams they've been a victim of racism, you contribute towards the hamster wheel theory. Okay? So now, if you don't understand why somebody's saying what they're saying to you, well, then ask them why. Because we have to ask ourselves why this person feels the way that they feel. If you've never walked a day in somebody's shoes, then how can you tell them, hey, look, you shouldn't feel that way about racism. You shouldn't feel that way about the police, blah, 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 blah. Instead of saying, look, you're wrong or you're just making it up, then, just go to them and ask them why. We have to have empathy. Go into it and say, look, brother, sister, why do you feel this way? Help me to understand your side of things. I'm not a black person. I'm not a white person. I want to know why you feel this way instead of trying to invalidate their feelings. And, for those of you who like to always bring up the issue of black on black crime, which, we all know it's a huge issue. However, if that is your only response to someone who says Black Lives Matter, or someone who says, look, I've been a victim of racism, well, you know what? Then I expect you to protest and to go in some of the black neighborhoods to help the black neighborhood improve itself and uplift itself, as opposed to just screaming, hey, look, well, what about black on black crime? Well, you know what? There's also white on white crime. There's Latino on Latino crime. These issues are not specific to one particular community. And so I think, we need to stop saying it to one another, because we're just invalidating each other's feelings. And, we're not being, we're not being genuine, and we're just, we're not pushing the needle forward. Now, on the other side of that is the issue of the notion that all police officers are bad. Let me tell you something. I know some guys who would not hesitate for a second to run into a burning building, to put themselves in front of a bullet to save you or your children, to protect you and your property. Many of these guys that I'm speaking of are my family. I love them. They love me. They've been there for me and my children. They're human beings. And so with that being said, I think we have to understand that police officers are people too. We have feelings, we have families, we're trying to provide for our families. We're trying to put food on our table. At the same time, many of us are trying to really trying to improve our communities. And so we have to kind of get away from this notion that all police officers are the same, or all black people are, lazy or unintelligent, or, race baiters. This is a false notion. And I think, if we're going to get off this hamster wheel, then we have to start asking each other why we feel the way we feel. And for those of you who like to scream racism every time a cop gets into an incident with someone, well, that's like the boy who cried wolf. Many times it's because of a lack of understanding, maybe cultural understanding. Maybe it could be bias, maybe it could be prejudice, maybe it could be over aggression. Who knows? But if you scream racism every time someone has an encounter with the police, and it's a white guy and a black guy, or a black guy and a white guy, well, then you know what? When an issue of racism actually comes up, no one's going to believe you. No one's going to believe you. So we need to understand what's real and what's not, and we need to stop invalidating other people's feelings. We need to stop doing that. And so I think that if you're a law enforcement officer, I think that anybody, if you wear your badge with integrity like I do, then you know what? If you witness an incident of racism, then I expect you to call it out. If you witness one of your colleagues doing something that is wrong, that is unjust, that is a violation of somebody's constitutional right, I expect you to speak out about it. But on the other side, I hope that those of you who have an open mind and know that not everybody's the same, that you would choose to thank a fellow police officer today, and and just let them know that you care, and that understand that we're trying to do the best we can, and that those of us who wear our badge with integrity, we're gonna work to root out the bad ones. We don't want anybody to destroy our profession. So in the meantime, like I said, try to understand somebody else. Understand everything's not about racism, and let's get off this hamster wheel. Let's get off the hamster wheel. Talk to one another in humility and kindness and empathy, and let's continue to be servants of one another. In the meantime, y'all have a great day.